I read the first Maccabees as a Protestant. Here's what I observed. I'll give you a brief overview of the first Maccabees, and then I'll jump more into my perception of it as kind of an outsider, if you will. So let's go jump into it. The first Maccabees is all about the Jewish revolt against the Seleucid Empire, which was an empire that persecuted Jews around 167 BC. And then the revolt took place for over about 7 years, from like 167 to 160 BC. So that's what the first Maccabees is all about. It's also interesting to note that Maccabees actually means hammer by what we can best tell. I don't know if that plays any sort of significance into anything, but it is an interesting fact nonetheless. There are a lot of names in the first Maccabees. I'm not going to cover all the names or all the characters. I'm just going to mostly focus on the overarching plot and the main protagonists of the first Maccabees when I give my overview here. So the main family that's featured is Mattathias and his 3 sons, who are the people who sort of started and led the revolt against the Seleucid Empire. Now, what started this revolt? As I already said, the Seleucid Empire was persecuting the Jews, but there were some triggering events recorded in the first Maccabees that basically gave a reason why the Jews revolted. So the Seleucid king, early on, dominated the Jews, took over Jerusalem, and a lot of Jews succumbed to their power, and they abandoned their God. They stopped worshiping God. They started worshiping pagan gods, which was what the Seleucid Empire would have worshipped. And they also helped build a gymnasium, and they tried to hide their circumcision, and they did athletics naked with the Gentiles. There was a lot of abandonment, a lot of grief, and a lot of persecution going on during around the 167 BC time period. However, there were a remnant of Jews recorded in the first Maccabees who did not bow their knee to idols and were faithful to God. And Mattathias and his family happened to be one of them. Now, a group of faithful Jews ran off into the wilderness and ended up getting killed by the king for not adhering to the one religion rule that the king tried to force the Jews to do, mainly worship the gods of the empire. And since these faithful Jews refused to do that, they got killed in the wilderness. And when Mattathias and his family heard about it, they rented their clothing, wept, and mourned over this loss, and then started a revolt. And so that's sort of the beginning of the Maccabean revolt as recorded in 1st Maccabees. Although Mattathias was the one who led and started the revolt, he was an older man, and he ended up passing down the torch to Judas, his son. And so Judas Maccabee, which is where the name Maccabeus, which is where the name Maccabees comes from, Judas took on the role of general over the Jews, leading the revolt against the Seleucid Empire. And it was recorded in 1st Maccabees that Judas was a righteous man, that he honored God, and it was recorded also that he would pray to God before battles, and that he would seek God for victory, basically, over the Seleucid Empire, because the empire was much bigger than the Jewish people, and their armies were much more massive. And so he was recorded being a righteous man, and when he went out to battle, he experienced a lot of success. So under Judas's leadership, with the help of God, the Jews were able to win a lot of battles against the Seleucid Empire, raising a lot of eyes, or eyebrows, as if you will, from the kings and the governors who were attacking the Jews. After winning a lot of battles, Judas actually was able to rededicate the temple in Jerusalem to God, which is actually a fun fact, where what the Jews celebrate over Hanukkah is the rededication of the temple recorded in the first Maccabees. So, interesting fact to note. But the battle or the revolt was far from over. The Seleucid Empire was still trying to crush the Jews, even though they were able to rededicate the temple and gain some sort of freedom for a little bit, for a small period of time. Actually, I would even say that they had more ambition to crush the Jews. It was recorded in a chapter that the armies would make their elephants, they had war elephants to crush the Jews, make their elephants drunk on berries before going into battle, which I don't know how that helps make an elephant more effective for battle, but I guess it's a cool fact that they made their elephants drunk on berries. It's also a cool fact to note that one of the Jewish warriors was recorded for being brave and sacrificing his life to save his people after killing an elephant under its belly. It was just a fun story. It was an interesting story in the first Maccabees. And the first Maccabees is very interesting because it's mostly a history of a war history. But I thought those were some interesting battle accounts in the first Maccabees. And at one point, under Judas's leadership during the revolt, a king made a treaty with Judas, which made it look like there might be peace and the revolt might end. But the reason why the king did that was because he was running out of money attacking Jerusalem. He wasn't able to penetrate it, and he was losing money. However, once he actually was able to visit Mount Zion after making the peace treaty, he broke his treaty and then tried to crush the Jews yet again. This will be a common theme throughout the first Maccabees, as you will see. Now, Judas does eventually die in the revolt. He died in battle, as any brave general does. But before he died, he actually made a peace treaty or an alliance with the Romans, although I'm not entirely sure how much that actually played into helping them win the revolt, because it didn't seem like they ever really intervened on their behalf. But I don't know. Either way, they made a treaty with the Romans before Judas' death, and Judas died in battle. And then following that, his brother Jonathan took over as general. He also ended up becoming judge and high priest later on, and besides just being general. At this point, it seemed like Jonathan was a lot more treaty happy. He made a lot more peace treaties and a lot more alliances than it seemed like Judas did. But I don't know if that was just because of Jonathan's disposition or what it was, or God's leading. I don't know exactly, but he made a lot more treaties, but a lot of them just ended up getting broken. And honestly, a lot of their enemies tried to use peace treaties as a way to attack or kill the Jews, according to 1st Maccabees. So Jonathan seemed a lot more treaty happy, but there were still a lot of battles and a lot of fighting going on even when Jonathan was leader. Much like his brother, Jonathan also experienced a lot of success in battles. It was also recorded that God was on the side of Judas and his family, Matthias' family, so you could presume almost from the beginning that they were going to have some success because victory and salvation was going to come through this family, according to God's leadership, sovereignty. However, the absolute victory would not come from under Jonathan as leader, and Jonathan ended up becoming tricked by one of the king enemies. They invited him into their city, and when he went into the city, all his men got killed, and then he got captured, and he ended up getting killed as well. And so the next leader was Simon, another son of Matthias, or brother to the first two leaders who died. So Simon then took leadership of the Israelite army, and he also was high priest and general and same sort of leadership roles as Jonathan was. And then Simon kind of had a lot of the finishing details. He won a lot more victories, he won a lot more battles, and ended up winning basically Israel all the land that they were fighting for back. He ended up winning them a lot of sovereignty, and a lot of the kings that were causing them problems either got captured or backed off. And he also rekindled their alliances with the Romans and with Sparta as well, and made friendship and allies with them. And it seemed like under Simon, they were able to gain back a lot of sovereignty and gain back freedom and peace. However, right before the end of the book of the first Maccabees, there is a traitor in the last chapter or two who basically stabs Simon in the back and kills his family and kills him. The only person remaining is his son John, who ends up then killing the traitors and protecting his people, and then he becomes leader, and then it ends there. The first Maccabees ends with John, the son of Simon, becoming leader of Israel after his family was all killed. That's how it ends, and it seems like almost like a cliffhanger. But by what I understand, Second Maccabees is not a sequel to the First Maccabees, so it's just an interesting way to end the story. But according to what I understand, First Maccabees is pretty historically accurate. I don't know for sure. I haven't really looked too deep into it, but by what I understand, First Maccabees is pretty historically accurate, so it should be a decent historical account of the Maccabean revolt. So some of my thoughts and observations and perceptions as an outsider who is not Catholic, I did find First Maccabees very interesting. I did enjoy it. It was actually a rather engaging book because it was a story. It was a war story. That's what it was. It was broken up a little bit with some lamentations and with some praises, so some poems, but otherwise it was a story. It was a war story. And it was very engaging and very interesting. I didn't see anything that I would say as like a Protestant or a different denomination in Christianity. I didn't see anything that I would disagree with or that was very like what I would call heretical or anything like that. It just seemed like a narrative. Now, I didn't again look too deep into how people interpret First Maccabees to get certain theologies out of it. But by what I could best tell, there didn't seem anything really that I would disagree with or would cause much issue with the rest of the books of the Bible. So I just thought from that standpoint, I was just kind of neutral. I just thought it was an interesting story. I thought it was an interesting tale to tell. By what I understand, First Maccabees is pretty historically accurate, but I don't know for sure. But apparently it's a good historical account of the Maccabean revolt. The one thing I will note from a theological standpoint is that it seems like God is mentioned a lot more in the beginning of the book than he is at the end. So like the first half, it talks a lot about how Judas prayed before battles, how God found favor with Judas, how he was a righteous man, and how Judas like cried out to God and rented his clothing when he feared the other armies and called out to God and trusted in God a lot. But it seemed like in the second half of First Maccabees, prayer and the mentioning of God and like his brothers praying to God before battles wasn't mentioned as often. It was mentioned a couple times, but it didn't seem as frequent or mentioned as often. I don't know why, but it just seemed like God wasn't mentioned as often later on in First Maccabees. For whatever reason, that is the case, but that was just one thing that I observed from more of a theological standpoint. Overall, though, I thought it was an interesting story, and I thought it was a good read. Now, I'm going to probably read Second Maccabees and give you my review of that as well. But anyway, that's the First Maccabees and what I saw as an outsider, if you will. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy these type of things, leave a like, leave a comment, tell me more about First Maccabees, things I didn't know or didn't cover. And if you enjoy these type of videos, subscribe and join along with the Like the World community. We like to explore different religions, explore different religious books, explore comparative religion and stuff like that. We just enjoy doing these type of things here. And this community is all about having respect for other people and other beliefs and just trying our best to understand this crazy world we live in. So if that sounds interesting to you, subscribe, join the community, and leave some comments and likes below. Thank you, and please, friends, continue to go out there and light the world.